We'll get started here, and we'll pass over the minutes until next meeting. Just wanted to open with, of course, recognition of the situation that many of our neighbors are experiencing, the recent flooding and the impacts and the impact to businesses and employees across the state. In our region, I imagine it's a microcosm of the state in which you can drive through many communities and not see a single sign that there was damage, yet around the corner, countless businesses and homes were impacted. So while it may not always be front and center for some of us, for others, it's impossible to avoid. I think it's important to recognize that there are folks out there who are really suffering. We need to help get them continued capacity through financial contributions, as well as pitching in and lending a hand, and letting them know that there's folks out there, the rest of Vermont, who's going to continue to do the work in the business that needs to happen. We have to keep moving. We have to find ways in which to support those impacted and those businesses prepare for reopening if that's the choice that they make, and help employees rather, find ways in which to continue to earn an income. So in recognition of still having to get the work done, I'm appreciative of everyone being here today. We're going to, if folks were looking at an agenda shared out previously a week or so ago, we've got a slight change to that agenda. And we are asking that Jason Gibbs, the Chief of Staff for the Office of Governor Phil Scott, is going to be joined by Kendall Smith, the Director of Policy Development and Legislative Affairs, to just talk a bit briefly about some of the flood impacts and the response. So I think at this point, Tori, I'm going to hand it over to you or directly to Kendall and Jason.
If we can turn it over to Jason just to talk briefly about some of the update on the flood. I think we just want to acknowledge what folks have been through before we get into the thick of the meeting. And then Commissioner Harrington and Commissioner Goldstein are just going to talk briefly about some of the updates that might be pertinent to some of the folks here. Great.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Jason Gibbs, Governor Scott's Chief of Staff, checking in with you this morning from the State Emergency Operations Center. We have we've been active here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week since the day prior to the flooding. We were naturally tracking the storm coming in, and I think it's fair to say it turned out to be longer experience than anyone predicted. We start every morning shift with a briefing of the governor first thing in the morning, and the National Weather Service typically kicks things off, and the meteorologist that was with us this morning, they have a team of folks that we've been working very closely with. They're, for those who aren't familiar with the SEOC operational model, it is the best example of multi-agency and partner collaboration that you're going to find inside the state or federal systems, in my opinion. But National Weather Service has an attachment here, and the meteorologist this morning observed that in about 30 years of service in the National Weather Service, this is the busiest 3 weeks that they can recall from a weather incident perspective, especially here in Vermont. So it's been an interesting time, and we are laser focused on serving the communities and the individual Vermonters that have been impacted by the flooding. To put it into context, we are tracking this morning a little over 3,000 individual claims inside the FEMA system. Our counterparts in FEMA are doing an excellent job. They're tremendous assets for us. We have about 500 FEMA employees on the ground with us in Vermont as we speak, and I expect that number to crawl up a little further as some of our transitional systems get set into place. Things like disaster recovery centers, which are places people impacted by the flood, individuals or businesses can go to interact with all of the assets all in one time. Sit down, talk to a human being, go over the information that you're receiving from our federal partners or from the state so that you can be sure you understand it and you don't have to wait on hold on the phone if you don't want to. So that number will increase. We on the residential impact side, I'll tell you that while there are small, truly devastated pockets that you are all familiar with, and of course, if your home or business is impacted by the flooding, the impact rate is 100%. There is no doubt that the most damage is from a cumulative perspective. Total lives impacted is in the Washington County area and in the Barry, Montpelier area in particular. Again, this is not to suggest that the consequence of flooding in other places is less impactful to the individuals. In the aggregate, the impacts are just larger in that area. There are about 500 individuals that we're tracking now from Barry. Expect that number to increase a little bit over the next couple of days. Most folks are registered in the system, and we're now tracking their needs directly. To put that into context, there are about 200, this is round number, 250 in Montpelier, and those two communities by far have the largest total numbers of individuals impacted. We are looking at total number of displaced Vermonters, people who need a habitable place to live, at 314 as a direct result of the flood. This is in addition to the unhoused prior to the flood. I am still waiting on a final number of total impacted businesses. We have those numbers for some communities. We're waiting on others. Sometime next week, of interest to I think a lot of folks in the state, we will also be introducing a publicly facing dashboard. It will look and feel a little bit like the dashboard that existed for the COVID-19 pandemic response, where you could go in and you could see on a geographic basis, specific basis, a variety of data points. We will be as I said, rolling out something similar to that in the days ahead, so folks can see where we are, and so that we can be held accountable to deliver the downward the downward trajectory in terms of total need that everyone wants to see as quickly as possible. There's a metric shit ton of stuff going on. And I couldn't possibly cover it all in the hour or so that you folks have here. So I'll just stop there and turn it over to my colleagues, Mike and Joan, for the more workforce and business focused updates.
Great. Tori, do you have a preference on who goes first? So I think mine can be short and sweet, and then I'll pass it to Joan if that works for Joan.
Yeah, I was actually going to say I have to get right off the phone, so if you don't mind me barging in.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so as was announced last week, we are making a program available to businesses that were impacted by the flood. There's $20 million available. We are hammering out every single detail as we speak. A message to all will be that this will hopefully take care of a fraction. We will not be able to take care of the entire losses, and we wholly understand the pain and suffering people are through. The best thing that all of you could do as you work with other businesses is to please let them know about the SBA availability. We do get data from SBA. There's only so far 57 businesses that have applied for SBA loans. We understand loans could be difficult. However, there is a deadline on that disaster assistance, so we would hate for people to miss it and miss any opportunity to receive some cash flow to make reopening available. Our grant will be available to all businesses. That's farms, cannabis businesses, landlords. I mean, we will make this a pretty inclusive opportunity, and hopefully in the next day or two, we'll be able to release all the details. Again, we recognize it's not going to take care of the entire loss, but it hopefully will help minimize some of the leverage that folks are going to have to go through in order to be fully opened. I appreciate all the help that folks have gotten, as Jason alluded to. When we look at some of the 211 numbers, of the hundreds of businesses that have been impacted, the majority, by a wide margin, is in Washington County. So, entire towns are really dependent upon their businesses getting back up and running for the vitality and sort of, so we hope that this grant program will give hope that there is a possibility. We also understand there's a number of charitable organizations that have already started up their funds, have started distributing funds, and that is great news. And we just hope that all of you could work with your various constituents and wherever you are located to make sure you direct people to the help that they need. SBDC has also been very active in helping individual businesses, and we again continue to emphasize for businesses to take a pause and get the help that they need. And that's all I have for right now.
Thanks,
Joan, could I just round that out?
Sure.
I want to put a sharp, I want to really emphasize, like, this is the first of what will be a comprehensive effort to find every available tool, create every bit of flexibility to do everything, pull every lever we can and turn every knob that we can to try to find ways to plug gaps in recovery funding needs. We're going to be creative and flexible. There are obviously some limits to what we can do, but our objective here is to make as much resource available as we can responsibly make available. There's also a incredibly important reason for people who had minor damage or nuisance damage to report to 211, and that is because we need those reports, whether they're in designated counties or undesignated counties, to paint a clear and accurate picture of the scope of damage, and also to calculate the gap between what's available for recovery funding and what's not, for a request that we will submit to the congressional delegation for a supplemental appropriation. If you're familiar with the appropriations process at the state or federal level, there are these periodic budget adjustments made to, previous fiscal years or current fiscal years appropriations. We call it the Budget Adjustment Act here in Vermont. It's a plus up. Sometimes it's a subtraction, but in this particular case, we'll be seeking a plus up in some specific and existing federal appropriations. Can't be a whole new program or special combination of things. It's got to be an existing GL. So we're going to have to provide the congressional delegation with evidence that supports this gap analysis, and that's where the 211 reporting comes in. So in your communities, in your networks, your personal networks, your professional networks, we all probably know people who had a little bit of basement flooding, or their driveway washed out, or their business parking lot got a little, but it's just not worth the paperwork. Nothing about reporting 211 obligates you to go through the hassle of all the other paperwork, but it does help us help our neighbors. So I just want to stress two things. That reporting is critical, and we know this $20 million is nowhere near enough, and we are going to leave no stone unturned.
Mike?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'll just echo Jason and Joan's comments and Tori's and everyone's, about wanting to support businesses and workers as best we can during this difficult time. At the department, there's a lot of questions about, UI and how disaster unemployment assistance may be a vehicle for folks to get some additional benefits if they don't qualify for UI. We did activate DUA back during Irene, and some of you may remember that. It was much smaller in scale or scope, but for the most part, our goal is to try to be as broad as we can in terms of how we administer the traditional UI program to fit as many people into that program as we can, just because that allows us to manage the volume better and hopefully get payments out the door faster. But for those people who truly do not qualify for unemployment insurance, there is the possibility of disaster unemployment assistance if they meet the eligible criteria, which for the most part means their work or their ability to work has to be directly impacted by the disaster. So again, that could include an individual who lost their mode of transportation or who's unable to get to work because the traveled roadway is out. And again, some of these folks may be able to work now, but they weren't able to work in the days immediately following the flood. So again, they would still qualify and would just need to file. The way the system works is DUA is a federal program through FEMA. However, it is co-administered by FEMA and the U.S. Department of Labor. We have applied for and received approval to offer DUA to Vermonters who are impacted in the affected counties. And as more counties come online, more people are eligible for disaster unemployment assistance. So far, the uptake on DUA has been relatively small and manageable. But again, I think that's attributable mostly to us trying to be as broad looking as we can in terms of how we make people eligible for traditional unemployment insurance. But again, as people are moving through the program, volumes are small enough right now that our staff are actually able to reach out to individuals directly out of our call center and sign them up for disaster unemployment assistance if their application doesn't work in UI and meets the qualifications of DUA, which is a nice place to be considering what we went through during the pandemic. People can get a personal touch from our staff. So that's still the goal unless volumes get to a critical point, but we have reassigned staff to our call center. We're also looking across state government and other agencies and departments to assign staff as need be. We're also expediting those claims that are indicated as flood related. So again, you all know, and I know Pat knows this better than most, the adjudications path can be long at times. And so we're those that are indicated as flood related separations from employment are getting a first look to see if we can easily sort those into the DUA bucket or move them through the process. So again, it's a little bit cleaner that way. In terms of, there's a lot of questions from employers in terms of, should I lay my staff off? That's really an employer decision. It's not one we can make for them, but should they need to lay folks off, those individuals should know that they are certainly eligible to apply. One of the unique things about disaster unemployment assistance that I don't think is widely known, but we are working to get that message out there, is that individuals who are maybe traditionally not eligible for UI, so think self-employed, independent contractors, agricultural workers, or individuals who haven't earned enough wages in their base period, which is essentially a look back of about the last 18 months, who wouldn't normally qualify, do have a path now to receive benefits through the DUA program. So again, just looking for different ways to get the word out for folks so they know this option and this benefit is out there. The minimum for DUA under the federal guidance is $233 per week. The maximum is whatever the state maximum is. And so in Vermont, the maximum is $705. again, so depending on wages earned, and when we look at self-employed independent contractors, we do look at their taxes reported for the 4 quarters of 2022, which is the last full calendar year. And that's, again, a requirement of the program, and that will determine the benefit amount. But, happy to answer any questions that folks have. But again, so far, just I think in the way both the counties are being added to the declaration, but also the way individuals are either managing this disaster or volunteering to help get their workplaces back open, has just ensured that there isn't a huge deluge of people coming into the system all at once, which can create havoc, as you know. So it's been increased pace, but a steady pace spread out over days. So that has just helped us manage any surge we would have seen in claims.
Great. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate the update, and I just want to reiterate, the comms folks on our team would want me to reiterate Jason's point that if you know anyone, even if it's not yourself, that has had any damage, please, please, please have them report it to 211 if you take anything away from this. Mike, is that a new hand?
Yeah, I would just add, so folks here are aware, and we can work with Tori and Abby, but we're also seeing whether or not we can put out an employer town hall, which we did during the pandemic. So we'll make sure that information gets out there via press release and other ways, so employers also can jump on that, and we'll do a Q&A for employers directly.
Hey, Mike, there's a question from Pat Moulton. Would the need to stay home to address flood damage make someone eligible for DUA?
My understanding is yes, but again, that's probably one of the nuances of the program. So again, I'll look at the eligible criteria, but the challenge would be whether or not they are truly able and available to work. So if somebody's home was completely taken offline and they had to relocate and they were working to get their home back online, then I would say yes. If it's minor flood damage to a home, they're still able to inhabit, that is where it probably becomes a little trickier, and we would have to get into the nuances of the case.
Great, thank you. Tom.
Hi there, this is Tom Longstreth from Resource. 2 things, our Barry facility at 30 Grant Street had about 6 inches of water running through. So we certainly have been impacted, but I wanted to say that just the outpouring of volunteers has been fantastic. And we're on the road to recovery, even though we've had to relocate our youth build program there, but the Granite Museum is taking us in, and we're in the process of rebuilding. The other thing I wanted to just say is that we're prepared to make recovery a real priority for our both of our youth build programs and for all of our intensive training programs. Doing construction while doing service is a nice fit. It adds value to the job training programs. It gives meaning to the trainees. So and so we're excited to do that. So we're looking forward to coordinate probably with some of you on how we can fit in terms of sort of boots on the ground, people with developing construction skills who can actually help people get their homes back together. So just wanted to add that to this conversation.
We have had our workforce development staff involved in the multi-agency resource centers, as well as the disaster recovery centers. I think the needle that needs to be threaded there is that we obviously want these employers to come back online. And so we're also trying to make sure that their workforce still exists when they come back online. What we are finding is that most people who come through the MARCs and the disaster resource centers are not looking for workforce development services. They're looking for information on unemployment insurance or disaster unemployment insurance or FEMA assistance or housing assistance. So, from that perspective, we are also training our staff who go to the MARCs and other places to be able to answer the UI and DUA questions. And we'll also be looking at, there are some other workforce grants, disaster grants that are available to states following a disaster. So we're also exploring those as well.
So given the I'm just jump in here. Given the focus of this team here, it's important to note that the strategic guidance that's been provided to our teams on the workforce front is that we need to be expediting the return to work to the greatest extent possible to minimize the amount of churn, secondary churn that occurs in the workforce as a result of the dislocation. So we've got a whole bunch of folks who can't report to work. They can only, as a practical matter, because it's expensive to live in Vermont, they can only afford to get by on UI or DUA for so long before they go to one of the many other great jobs that are available in the region, given our workforce and demographic challenges. So our folks are focused on getting these businesses back online so that folks can return to work. Otherwise, we're going to see like a secondary impact, economic impact from the churn of workers migrating away from temporarily closed facilities.
So Jason, you preface that with the word strategic, which is a great transition into our next agenda item, which is the review of the strategic plan updates. So that's, Tori, you want to take that away?
Yes, I would love to. In the interest of time, I'm going to be pretty quick with this. Abby and I will follow up with you all with a more in-depth email with our tracker that we sent to you in our last update. But I do just want to give you guys a quick update on what's been going on in workforce, notwithstanding the flood. So Abby, if you switch to the next slide. So since our May 26th meeting, which feels like it was 150 years ago, we have convened a lot of different committees. One, I just want to note for you all, it's not a part of our strategic plan, but I think it's important to talk about is our bi-weekly interagency working group on workforce. Just so you all understand kind of what happens at our process level. We have all the programmatic folks coming together every other week to talk about our workforce data, implementation timelines, what's status and program participation, as well as goal setting and policy development for the next year. And so that happens every other week. And I think it's just important to recognize that that's kind of happening in tandem with the processes that we've established through the SWDB. So in June, we've had agriculture, the healthcare committee, manufacturing, relocation, recruitment, the operating committee, and the youth committee have met. We had scheduled the policy, training, credentialing, and career pathways committees. Those had to be rescheduled because they were during that first week of the flood. So that work will be happening. But I think there's a lot of great work that's going on in agriculture. They're focused on right now youth engagement, developing an inventory of opportunities for farmers to engage with youth directly so we can start that pipeline earlier, as well as an employer toolkit that is focused on hiring foreign labor. The Healthcare Workforce Strategic Plan Advisory Group was a standalone entity that now came under the State Workforce Development Board so that we could work together. They're focused on all the major investments that we've made in the last few years as it pertains to the healthcare sector and tracking that work. The Manufacturing Committee is focused on twofold. We're working on a manufacturing rebrand to help target folks who are younger and want to get more diverse, get into the manufacturing sector, as well as promotion of all the different manufacturing month events that happen in October. The operating committee selected a vendor for the one-stop operator, which I'll get into later on. And then the youth committee is focused on a youth engagement strategy statewide, not as it pertains to agriculture, where we can connect employers with different youth events to get more career exploration happening at a younger level. We also visited Orange, Rutland, Addison, and Franklin counties. We had 3 more scheduled, but again, given the flood, we did not do our remaining county tours, but those have been going very well. So you can go to the next slide, Abby. So for June, just to give everyone context, I think it'll be hard. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. I think it'll be hard to wrap your head around some of these things when they're in a vacuum. But to orient you, remember the focuses of our strategic plan are maximizing WIOA, aligning our workforce systems, supporting our workforce, increasing education and training, and increasing the size and quality of our workforce. And then each of our committees have their focus, their subset focus that they are working on. So how Abby and I organize our work product is we have a schedule in Excel, and it's every single month. It tells us exactly what we need to do by that month as it was written in the long one-pager strategic plan. So for June, it was really simple. We just needed to set a quarterly meeting for a training credentialing committee and publish our county tour schedule, which got a little bit messed up, but we'll redo that for the coming months. And selecting a one-stop operator for July. So we have selected and entered in the contracting process. We're not able to disclose yet who that is until the contracting process has been completed, but that will be the final piece in bringing the board back into federal compliance, and it will be a huge win in terms of coordination among systems and supporting our workforce alignment goals. Manufacturing committee worked on their marketing campaign. Relocation recruitment committee started talking about, what we are looking for out of a statewide, that's hyper local, but statewide coordinated relocation recruitment system. They also reviewed and provided feedback on the RFP for the vendor we received $200,000 from the legislature to contract with. This is to develop the New American Support Network system so that we can help attract and bring more refugees, New Americans, asylees into the state of Vermont, which is a really exciting opportunity that I can't wait to see how that goes. And then we've selected our new members for the hospitality and retail committee. So we've checked off, thankfully, even with the flood, we've checked off both of our deliverables for June and July. Next slide, Abby. So August, I'm going to give you an update on where we're at with the other things, but for update, the only thing we've done so far for August is we've set up a formal communication system for county visits. This was feedback from you all that when Abby and I started doing county visits, we were just dropping into counties, talking to businesses directly one-on-one. We felt like it needed to be a more coordinated approach. So we've worked with VDOL and ACCD, who communicates with the RDCs on going into counties and how we can share information and make it actionable moving forward. The next three, those meetings are set to be scheduled, but I think one I'm really excited about, and a lot of folks here, is the policy committee will start discussing our state performance accountability measures for WIOA, as well as evaluating our data on disengaged workers and starting to provide some strategies for bringing more of those workers into the workforce. So stay tuned for that information. Again, we will be posting very soon the New American Support Network RFP. And for the youth committee, we are focused on compiling youth engagement events currently in Vermont and identifying gaps and then creating a mentorship list. We as a staff have done step one. It has not been approved yet by the committee, but we're working to get that in front of them at their next meeting. And then later in the year, we're just focused on, creating the employee toolkit, some of the other committee work, but there's a lot more to come. We've just started work on these deliverables. Later, the sections that you'll see in the email are a lot more detailed as it pertains to everything that's going on. Abby, did I miss anything there?
No, I don't believe so.
Great. All right, we can move forward. Finally, I just wanted to give an update. Oh, did I hear a question? Nope. Just want to give an update on the one-stop operator. Again, as I mentioned, we have entered into a contract with the one-stop operator. This is something that's very exciting for both the Department of Labor, us, and all of the WIOA partners. We're hoping that this can bring a total new era of coordination among the WIOA system so that we can track data better, we can refer clients better, and we can provide services better to folks and increase the number of people that we're serving using these funds. So we're very excited about this. We have entered contract negotiations. This will have to go through the Attorney General's office because of how large the contract is. But it is something that I'm excited again to see where that goes. And we can't wait to announce to you all who we've selected and the work that's going to begin. But right now we're in that kind of no man's land of contract negotiations and waiting for that to happen. Any questions on this section? Great. So I'm going to turn it over to Kendall shortly to talk about the SOCWED, and then Jason Gibbs to talk a little bit about the transition. But I just wanted to say to everyone, thank you so much for the past 2 years. I have thoroughly enjoyed working with everyone. I have always viewed my time at the Workforce Development Board as a tactical mission to come in, give us some clear focus so that you all can take it and run with it. And I feel like we have a very strong foundation right now. And I really look forward to seeing all of the work that you guys are doing. And I really will miss working with everyone here. So I really appreciate all your hard work and listening to Abby and I harass you with emails every single day, every single week, every single night. I really believe that we're set up for success. So I just wanted to say thank you all. I've really enjoyed it. And I promise to do my best to come back after law school so you can count me as a net new worker. But I really appreciate everyone. So thank you so much for the past 2 years. So I'll turn it over to Kendall.
Well, thank you, Tori. And I just saw a lot of clap emojis, but maybe if people would just unmute for a second and we can give Tori a real round of applause for all the work that she's done over the past 2 years. Thank you, Tori. Tori's loss to us, again, will be felt. And I think we all agree, though, that Tori, your future is incredibly bright and that you're going to do amazing things at law school. And we really do hope that you do eventually come back to us in Vermont. Seeing that work plan you're leaving the board with that you just outlined, even though it was quick, I think is going to be super helpful for Abby and for us all in terms of keeping the wheels on the track. And we'll talk about the transition a little bit more here in a moment. But folks might recall, we've talked about it in other meetings before, but it's been a little while, that there's currently a workforce governance task force that's taking place. We call it the SWDB for short, because it has this very long name of the Special Oversight Committee on Workforce Expansion and Development. I serve on it along with your chair here, Adam. We have Jay Ramsey, who's our workforce director at the Department of Labor, as well as Rep. Marcotte and Senator Clarkson as part of that group. And what we're currently looking at as kind of a refresher from the last meetings when this has come up is what is the best way to essentially coordinate all of our workforce development assets we have in the state, both internal to state government as well as private and nonprofit activities. That report is, I think, we have a contractor that's going to be giving us a report, I think this fall, and then we'll be making some final recommendations to the legislature for this coming session. But one of the things that we're discussing right now as a possibility, again, not final among many, is could the Workforce Development Board, could the executive director be reimagined, be elevated, be resourced differently to be that convener? Because with all of you here from the private nonprofit sector, between all the agency and state government folks we have represented, we have all the players right now basically in this virtual room. We also have to have this board by federal law, and Tori and Abby, you guys have done amazing things, like Tori, you just said, giving it new life, giving it new direction, and making it something that people want to engage with. From the governor's office, I'm sure Jason will echo what I'm saying. We really are excited about the strategic plan you just laid out and how we can interact with that and hopefully use that as a rallying tool around the state in terms of how we are coordinating our efforts together. So again, there's no final decision that's been made, but Tori leaving, as weird as it sounds, because I just said you have enormous shoes to fill and we don't want you to go, does give us kind of a moment, at least in terms of the executive director position, which will have an interim, but to pause and think about, is this the person? Is this the right place? Is this the entity that we want to elevate and really all, again, support in terms of organizing our workforce development strategic plan and efforts? Tori, let's see what's on the next slide. I'm not sure if it's relevant or something that we can skip over, just given the time frame that we're in, but we currently are just completing phase 1 of that workforce governance task force work, where we have this contractor PCG, and their job in phase 1 was to basically map out, understand, and present us what does the current workforce development system look like. We're entering in phase 2 where we get to those recommendations that I was just talking about. And then phase 3 is when we'll really kind of decide as a group what our recommendation is for how we move forward. But again, I just want to flag for everybody the way that the Workforce Development Board intersects with that conversation. They're public meetings. People are welcome to join. Adam, I don't know if there's anything you would add, but otherwise I would turn it over to Jason to talk about transition work.
No, let's move to Jason. Thank you.
Thank you. This is pretty straightforward. First, I just want the record to reflect that Tori promised to come back. Second, I also want to add my voice to the choir of people thanking Tori for her work. It has been very valuable, both with you folks on the statewide Workforce Development Board and also in our office, and we appreciate it greatly. I am still reeling from this realization that she's not going to be with us in the immediate future, but I look forward to welcoming her home when she has completed her studies and is ready to take the bar. We will ensure a smooth and seamless transition. Workforce continues to be at the top of the governor's priority list. I would say that if there is any silver lining in what we're currently dealing with from a, apologies, still transportation garage out there. If there's any silver lining here, it is that we are poised to carry out this recovery and revitalization work at the same time that we have the largest cumulative public works project since the New Deal coming out of the Great Depression. Interestingly, as a percent of gross national product, the combination of infrastructure and community revitalization investments made in CRF, ARPA, IIJA, and Inflation Reduction Act, plus a few miscellaneous appropriations and earmarks along the way, is greater than the New Deal. In the next 4 years alone, we will more than double our total investments in annual investments in transportation infrastructure alone. There is just a ton of work that is about to get underway, and that was in the pipeline, as many of you well know, prior to the flood. The recovery work that we're doing is a reset button for a lot of neighborhoods. And we know from our experience in this flooding that the mitigation investments that we have been making, the resilience investments that we've been making, they work. And they have economic benefit as well. So all that is by way of saying that we are committed in our office to ensuring that there is a smooth transition, that this work continues to be a high priority, that it continues to be integrated into the administration's strategic planning, policy development, and budget development processes. And you will continue to see that reflected in the work that is produced by the governor's office and by the agencies and departments that we are responsible for managing. Tori or Kendall, is there anything else in that space that you wanted me to cover?
No, I defer to Tori and Abby.
No, I think so. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts? No. Oh, Larry.
Hi, Larry Moak. My first meeting with you all. I'm with the Laborers International Union in North America and also part of the Vermont AFL. I have two questions. One on the UI. Is the work search requirement going to be waived at this point? And then second, in your whole presentation, what's the plan for the construction workforce? And we have the oldest in the country.
I can take the second question first. We have a joint working relationship with the Agency of General Contractors right now. The reason that we did that is because they're already doing a lot of workforce work. We didn't want to create an additional committee. So we can certainly loop you into when those conversations happen, what we're working on specifically with them and the events that we're holding there. But there's a lot of good work on doing new videos on what it's like being on the job, trying to promote and rebrand some of the work to a younger audience to get more folks in the door. So I can certainly send that your way. Oh, and then on the DUA, I will hand over to Mike because I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, so in Vermont, if an employee has a return to work date, they do not have to complete the work search if it's within 10 weeks or less. So again, this is one of those areas where we're trying to be a little flexible for folks. So, you know, traditionally during a seasonal employment, the employer would have a good idea of when their return to work date is. In this case, we're just taking the good faith effort and the word of the impacted employee. If they can give us a reasonable time when they believe they'll be returning to work with their employer, they do not have to conduct a work search as long as it's within that 10 weeks or less. Beyond that, that's a different conversation. But I think in most cases, what we're hearing is that individuals are believing it's going to be a few weeks to something up to 10 weeks. And so we're able to waive the work search in those cases.
Thank you both.
If I could, Tori, just to follow up on Larry's second question there. I mean, look, we still have half of our kids graduating from high school without a plan. So there's some low-hanging fruit there that we really got to do a better job of dealing with. And it's going to require some frank and direct conversations with our friends in education about accelerating the work that is underway. There's a lot of talking, and there needs to be a lot more like numerical impact on the work that we're doing on the ground in order for us to have any chance of meeting the infrastructure opportunity where it is. Second, we are going to absolutely have to get folks to come and live and work and raise their families here. The beautiful thing is that all of the job opportunities that exist here represent one of the best chances we're going to have to recruit people to Vermont and to retain them. But we got to come to grips with the fact that it is expensive to live here and that the costs of living are rising, some of which government can control and some of which government has less influence over. The ones that government controls need to be kept in check. They need to actively be moderated. And we need a more willing partner in the legislature to take on that affordability crisis, to be candid with you. But having said that, there is this tremendous opportunity to reverse the demographic trajectory. We got to get more workers in our workforce. They will buy houses, put kids in our schools, visit our local businesses. This is the focus of our administration. It has been from day one. And the great news is all of the challenges that we've been through over the last several years, pandemic and now the flooding foremost among them, present us with this incredible investment opportunity. And if we don't squander it, if we prioritize the order of operations here, we can make Vermont more appealing and affordable. We can revitalize our housing stock in county economic centers that have been atrophying for the last 30 years, which is reflected in these demographics, the number of kids in our schools, the number of workers in our workforce, the number of jobs in your communities. We can restore economic equity. I mean, 40 years ago, Springfield was the wealthiest city in Vermont. 30 years ago, 25 years ago, when I grew up in Rutland, it was as vibrant as downtown Burlington. You know, there are some decisions that have been made in the intervening decades that have driven that. And others that have made us less able to respond to the macro changes in the global economy. And we got to be honest about those things. But the work that we're doing now as a result of the recovering from and revitalizing from the pandemic and now this flood supercharges our ability to get after those issues. And that's what our focus is.
Great. Scott?
Yeah, I'd chime in. I heard the word Springfield and I figured I'd say something. Right now, the legislature has had a study of career and technical education access. They have made recommendations. That's APA. It's with the Agency of Education to draw up a plan on how to address the concerns or barriers to access that were outlined in the report. Hopefully those recommendations will move forward and will chip away at some of the workforce pieces. And I know career and technical education would be glad to do as much as we can. Hopefully we can reduce some of the barriers that are inherent in the system. Some of it is CTE is so popular that we need to create more spaces for kids to access CTE. It depends on where you are. But the rules and regulations for CTE haven't changed in over 20 years, and the funding system kind of creates some challenges, and hopefully that work can move forward and CTE can do its part also.
Hey, Scott, we got a briefing yesterday in our cabinet meeting from the Secretary of Education, and it was a performance metrics update to measure how well we are recovering from learning loss over the pandemic. A very interesting observation made yesterday was that the CTE performance metrics are consistently the best pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, and have also been the most stable. That the kids who are moving through our CTE system more consistently get better results and go on to, I mean, this is not all news, but now we have very clear sort of academic and placement performance data that paints a longitudinal picture that over time, that CTE system is cranking out consistency. And your point is, and we agree, we need to expand the capacity of that system because we know it works.
Glad I raised my hand for good news.
All right, any other thoughts or questions? If there's not, I'll do everyone's favorite thing and conclude a meeting early. But speak now or forever hold your peace, and I'll turn it over to Adam. Great.
We'll just close it out with one more moment of praise for Tori. I want to join the chorus already. I think it's always a sign of a great leader who leaves an organization better off than they joined. So while you stood on the shoulders of those before you, you've really created an opportunity for us to be able to carry forward that work under the current circumstances and now conditions that we find ourselves. So job well done, and wish all the best to you. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks.